Good evening, Wood County. I'm Madeline Fenning, news director here at BG24 News. Every week, we bring you the stories that matter most on campus, in the community, across the state and nation. The producers panel is where we take a step back and talk about the stories in our own opinion. But these opinions do not reflect the views of the organization and do not impact the way we cover these or any other stories. Tonight, we'll discuss the ongoing conflict of race and law enforcement around the nation before moving on to the recent Grammy nominations, before finally discussing some new installments of some major film franchises coming to theaters next year. It's all next on your BG24 News Producers Panel. Welcome, everyone. I actually have a guest with us today. We have Greg Harrison here from the Black Student Union. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. I'm happy to be.
And we also have our regular cast with us here. We've got Matt Heitkamp, who is our executive producer here at BG24 News, and Amy Stegerwald, an anchor and reporter. So thanks for coming tonight, you guys.
No problem.
Thank you. Well, tonight we turn to an ongoing discussion in the U.S. about the treatment of minorities by local law enforcement. The Obama administration issued a report yesterday accusing Cleveland police of using excessive and deadly force against citizens, saying it was the violation of their constitutional rights. The Justice Department says Cleveland police engaged in a pattern of practice of unnecessary force, including shooting citizens, hitting them in the head, and spraying them with chemicals. The department faced scrutiny last month after the fatal shooting of a 12-year-old at the hands of law enforcement. Obama's report comes only one day after a controversial decision in New York. A grand jury chose not to indict the officer who caused the death of a 43-year-old Eric Gardner. The officer placed Gardner in an illegal chokehold that killed the unharmed man. Both the situations in Cleveland and New York come only a week after the indictment decision in Ferguson that sparked a national uproar and dialogue on race and law enforcement. So definitely a lot going on this week in the U.S. when it comes to race and law enforcement and that discussion. A lot of protests, a lot of feelings. So what I'm wondering is, this is an issue that has been going on for years, this brutality with law enforcement. So why is it that these cases this past week have sparked such national attention?
In my opinion, I think that this has become such a huge issue now because of our judicial system's decision to not indict these individuals who are committing these heinous crimes. Mm-hmm. I think before we had known that these things were happening, but I think now this is an even bigger issue because our law enforcement or our judicial system is choosing not to hold those individuals accountable, and that's why this is such a pressing issue now.
Interesting.
These events are also being covered more than they've ever been covered in the past before. Like you said, yeah, stuff like this has been going on for a while, but media, as big as it is today, they are there at the moment it's happening, so to cover everything.
I think social media has helped spread it as well. You know, people are getting these videos on their cell phones, they're going viral, their friends are seeing them, and that's kind of causing a lot of controversy, and a lot more people are aware of the situations now than they were before.
Absolutely. I think that internet point is great, that social media has allowed a lot of the cases to go from a very small word of mouth, sort of situation in a certain neighborhood to all of a sudden bloom into national knowledge about one instance, and that's something that we've been able to see. It spread like wildfire. But what I find interesting is a lot of these protests, and a lot of the protests have been peaceful in nature, but there's also been a lot that have been quite violent, and a lot of people who have offered a rebuttal to these protesters saying, oh, well, you're calling for no violence, but these protests, some of them have been violent in nature. I know last week in Ferguson, businesses were burned down, people were harmed. So where do you think this kind of pull is coming from, I guess, between these protesters who are saying they want peace for, their people, but are not acting peacefully in their protests?
It's a very difficult situation. The way I kind of look at it is, whenever people are protesting and just by their rights, they can do so peacefully. And then when the police force show up, it tends to get more. They tend to, get more violent, and almost in a result because they see this police force. But they're also just doing their jobs. They have to understand that they're supposed to be there to keep people safe. Unfortunately, it doesn't always play out that way.
Absolutely.
I think the word protest in general over the years has just built up a negative stigma. I think when people hear the word protest, whether individuals are going to be peaceful or not, when people hear the word protest, they're going to already have this negative stigma in mind. And so I think that's one thing that's playing into what's happening like in this discourse with the protesters. And I think another thing is that I think it all has a lot to do with how things are framed. And I'm keeping in mind that I do not live in Ferguson. I do not live in these places where these issues are happening nationally. I don't live in those places, and so I don't know 100% what's happening there. I can only form my opinion or my worldview around what is being presented at me or what's being framed. And so I honestly think that the protesters are being framed in a negative light. I definitely am aware that there are some people who are protesting violently, but I think majority of individuals are peacefully protesting, and I think that the media is framing people differently.
Yeah, that's a good point. They do frame it that way, and they also frame the police the same way there too. There are some police who are just doing their jobs, trying to keep the peace, and then unfortunately you have the couple individuals who get a little in the heat of the moment, take it a little too far, and of course that's what the camera is going to be all over, and that's what everyone's going to be talking about.
You're always going to have those extremists on both ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely, and I know what you said about police officers who keep the peace, and there's a lot of people who say police, local law enforcement are supposed to be peacekeepers, not people who enforce scare tactics. And a lot of these protesters, what they're really just trying to do is call forward reform for these local agencies, and that is exactly what's been going on in Cleveland. The Obama administration, called upon the Cleveland Police Department to change their practice, and that's exactly what's going on. And they are working with the police department to allow a third-party independent monitor to oversee some of these changes in practice and policy. And one of the things that they're doing is to train, and they're doing this actually in New York now as well, to train local law enforcement individuals to better handle instances and altercations with citizens on the street, and so that way shots don't have to be fired. And so I think that's something that everyone's kind of wondering, why wasn't this kind of the priority in the first place? Why wasn't this our practice in the first place? So what is it that you think has led us to the point where we have to take a step back and really implement a solution that really seems common sense and should have been there in the first place?
Well, I know a lot of these practices have been and still. I've actually gone through riot control training through my military unit, and that's the thing they teach us right away is what not to do. Do not hit people in the head or in certain different areas. Unfortunately, it's just in that heat of the moment kind of rough thing. I think that's when it causes something. And then yes, you do have your couple officers who probably are taking it too far, but also you have to kind of look from their perspective and say, in the heat of the battle, whatever you want to call it, that stuff can kind of happen.
I have many people who are close with me who are in the military and have these very advanced guns and weapons, and when you give those weapons to police officers, they aren't properly trained all the time. They don't know exactly how to use them. So training like this might help them, might make them better aware of how to react in situations like the ones in Ferguson.
I honestly think before we can, I think what you two are saying makes perfect sense. I agree with you, but I think before we can focus on the training or focus on how to improve the training, I think we need to first use what's happening, use this turmoil to focus on the greater conversation at hand or the greater issue at hand, which is that we don't live in a post-racial society, and that there's clearly tension between individuals of different races. And so while police officers and those in positions of power do have training to help them handle situations, at the end of the day, they are human beings, and they still are subject to their own personal biases. And I think we should just acknowledge that and first address that. And I think until we address that, the training and all of those other things I don't think they'll be as effective, basically.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that the core, like you say, the core issue here is not, that police officers are not properly trained, or that the culture of law enforcement is a little tainted. I think that it's the tainted area is our understanding of race and the fact that race and racism is still a volatile issue in the United States. I mean, when you look at a lot of these local law enforcement agencies, most of them are made up of white officers, and they are enforcing the law in communities where there are a lot of minority individuals. And there are a lot of people who say that is just inherently unfair because of the issue of racism in our nation. And so there are a lot of people who are saying that we need to have greater affirmative action measures being taken in these local law enforcement agencies, so that way you have more officers of color, more officers who are women, people to have a more diverse law enforcement agency. So would you guys think a more diverse law enforcement agency would help to sort of smooth out some of this divide?
I think absolutely. I think anytime you have representation of multiple perspectives, I think the result is always going to be better versus a single perspective, or not having multiple perspectives represented or brought to the table. So absolutely, I think by having a more diverse police force, or having more in diverse law enforcement, I think you have the opportunity for multiple perspectives to be brought to the table.
Absolutely. I know that here, when we had a lot of perspectives brought to the table at BG last week, when we had a lot of student protests that were going on. You're with the Black Student Union, and there were some protests and conversations that were organized by your organization. Talk about that a little bit.
So last Wednesday, after the grand jury in Missouri decided not to indict Darren Wilson, we as a Black Student Union decided to have a protest, but for two reasons. One, we just thought as a community, we needed a space to vent our frustrations for the situation, and then two, I think we needed to gather as a community and I guess kind of strategize and figure out some next steps on how to hold these systems accountable and speak out against these injustices.
So what is it with students, that you think is very important when it comes to this conversation? Students are, we are in college, we are expanding our minds and learning how big the world is, and what really goes on in the country that we live in and everything. So why is it that college, you think, is an important environment to have a conversation about Ferguson, about race and law enforcement in the U.S.? What is it about college specifically that makes it more important?
Well, college, I mean, that's where you hope to think that's where the younger minds are being they're being expanded. That's where the future leaders of America, and for lack of a better word, they need to understand these issues so that we can fix them.
I think college is a time where you really form your beliefs. You form how you want to react to something and how you want to make a difference. And by doing protests like the ones the students did on campus, they are expressing their feelings in a healthy way.
I would agree. I would also add that college is a time where we are taught to think and given the skill set and tools to form our own thoughts and opinions. And I think we as students I think it's important to talk about this in college, because as college students, it's important for us at this time in our lives to understand that everyone in the world has their own worldview, and everyone's worldview is shaped by their own personal experiences. And so because of that, everyone's perspective is their reality, is their own truth. And so instead of arguing with that or attacking that, just recognizing that that's that person's worldview, and as another person, you have the power to enlighten them and expand their worldview, not necessarily change it or attack it.
Absolutely, definitely a lot of stuff to work with there, a lot of things to think about. But when we come back, we are actually going to talk about the Grammy nominations that were announced today, and then we're going to take a look at some of the contenders and make some of our own winner predictions. Stay with us. Well, welcome back. It's that exciting time of the year again, and I'm not talking about the holiday season or the sales, though those are really nice, but I'm talking about Grammy nominations. A lot of new artists are up for some big awards, so let's start with the Record of the Year nominees. We have Fancy by Iggy Azalea featuring Charlie XCX, one of my biggest anthems this summer. Chandelier by Sia. We have Stay With Me, which is the Dark Child version by Sam Smith. We have Shake It Off by Taylor Swift, one of my favorites. And then All About That Bass by Meghan Trainor. So these are the nominations for Record of the Year. And these, what do you think? A couple of these are actually kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, they are. I wasn't expecting to see like the All About the Bass on there. It's a good song. I like that song, but I was surprised that got nominated.
I mean, for a Grammy, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
They believed in that.
Yeah.
Her voice is very different. I think that's why. Her voice it doesn't sound like a lot of other artists.
That is true. That song did kind of really it was so saturated with that unique, fun, like, she almost reminds me of like a Tracy Turnblad, like Hairspray style type of thing. And anytime you have like a lot of fun, rich, like uniqueness to a song, I think it gives it more Grammy potential.
I guess I'm not surprised that I see any of those songs on there. When I think about Record of the Year, like I think about like you said, like an anthem, like something that like I have heard all year, and like all of those are like my shower songs. So
that is the list of shower songs. I completely understand. Shake It Off is probably my favorite on there, although I love Fancy, but Stay With Me too, I think is probably one of the more I guess serious, or it's like a love song.
Yeah,
It's like kind of slower.
I think when it comes to actual voice, that's my favorite one. When it's just like when you take away the other factors, the flair and all of that. I think when it comes to the actual like talent of the voice, that's what I would pick.
Well, and I definitely think that Sam Smith is going to sweep the Grammys this year. He is like what we need while Adele is on maternity leave. He really, really is. He has stepped in and said, don't worry, I've got it. I'm British. I've got soul. I am sad. I've got this album, which is, I think he's going to definitely sweep the Grammys. But I know that we also have, because he is a new artist, we can also take a look at some other new artists that are up for awards. Let's see, Bastile's up for the new artist Grammy. We also have, Iggy Azalea, who has just dominated the charts this year. We have Brandy Clark, another unique artist, and then Haim, which has been a breakout alternative star. So and then Sam Smith. Sam Smith, I do feel like is going to win Best New Artist, but I do think it's going to be between Sam Smith and Iggy Azalea. What do you guys think?
I think that was a really great call. I think Iggy has like totally taken over like the pop and rap charts.
She just raps for so many different people. She just is featured in songs you wouldn't even expect her to be in. And that's what makes her unique and up for a Grammy.
Absolutely. The thing that makes, I think, Iggy really competitive is that if she is sprinkled in a song, it is going to be number one. It just will be, or it's going to do really, really well. Sam Smith, though, that whole album is just like, hits you right here. It's just so great. And he just kind of came out of nowhere, and everyone was just like, wow, like here's this voice and all these wonderful lyrics, and he did it all himself, and it's really great. So it's really going to be interesting to see. I really would love to be able to see the nominations for Album of the Year, which is like the big award, but those will be announced tonight, actually during the Grammy holiday special. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for that. But who do you guys think will be up for Album of the Year? What albums are you guys seeing?
Is this even a thing? I definitely think Beyonce, like for sure, like Beyonce.
No, that album. Yes, that album was a big achievement. It was dropped, out of nowhere. No one saw it coming, and it is just like become. I think everybody has that song on when they're driving. They're just like, I want that album on when they're driving. They're like, I want to hear Partition. I want to hear XO. Everyone's been covering all her songs. It's just been an album that has lent itself to so many other artists for covers. It's been everywhere.
I'll tell you, that was mentioned earlier was Bastille. Out of all of them, that would probably be my favorite. I don't think they're going to win, because their music is a little different, and which is I like about it. It's not as much mainstream as you see in a lot of these other songs. Unfortunately, I don't think that'll get them the victory.
I'm between Imagine Dragons
Okay.
and Katy
Dragons is
Perry.
good.
You know, Prism, I don't think it's going to do as well as she
All the
would
songs
like.
just pump me up so much. I love it.
I mean, I love Roar. If I'm having a bad day, you know, or if I just need that little extra for motivation, I'll listen to it. But I don't think Prism's going to do nearly as well as some of these other albums. I definitely think my vote is going to be Beyonce's going to take Album of the Year. My vote's Beyonce. What are your votes?
Probably maybe even Taylor Swift, because she has a bunch of songs, not just Shake It Off. She had a couple of big hits this year.
Definitely. Well, I mean, it just came out though, so I don't even know if it's eligible because it just came out. I mean, pretty recently.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, already everyone is just gushing over 1989.
Yeah.
I am. I love it. I think it's wonderful. I think it's the perfect transition she's made from country to pop. So I don't know. We'll just have to see. Definitely some interesting things to think about. And we're going to check in later tonight to see what those Album of the Year nominations are. But when we return, we're going to transition from music to film, and we're going to see 2 classic film franchises that are making a major comeback to the big screen. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, 2 major film franchises will soon appear on the screen for the first time in years, Jurassic Park and Star Wars. Jurassic Park will return to the screen in June as Jurassic World, a theme park where visitors come face to face with genetically modified dinosaurs. Star Wars will return next December for their 7th installment. The film will be called Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Pretty exciting stuff there. I mean, these film franchises have very dedicated fans,
Yes.
have created entire cultures. And for another film to come out, must just be like the most
big.
exciting news.
They have the technology nowadays to make the films even better than they were back, whenever, long time ago when they were made.
Yeah,
so.
well, growing up, I grew up on these films. To this day, I am still a huge Star Wars fan, and when I saw that teaser trailer that I just put out, I lost my mind. I thought it was great. I love the fact that they're going to, the Millennium Falcon's going to be back in it. I saw that part. That was cool. I love that Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, the original 3, which was better than 1, 2, and 3. Well, 4, 5, and 6 is better than 1, 2, and 3. We'll be back in it, which will make a big difference. It's going to make a big comeback. I can't wait.
You know, actually, in regards to what you were saying about how far technology's come, I am actually terrified to see the new Jurassic Park, and you're talking about genetically modified dinosaurs.
Genetically modified dinosaurs. It's like, what more advantage do they need?
Right. I'm
They're
sure
the biggest predators our Earth has ever known. That's nuts. But I know that's probably going to be something. That just sounds like such a summer flick, doesn't
It'll
it?
probably be in 3D as well.
I'm sure.
Special effects is probably going to carry that film.
I could see that film being like, if the technology were really advanced enough to where they're like, okay, not only is it 3D, we're gonna put you in a park. We're gonna film it. We're gonna have holograms around you. The dinosaurs are gonna literally be coming at you. It's just that dedicated.
I'm also excited that Chris Pratt has got the role. He's awesome. If you know knows, he was from Parks and Rec.
I know. Well, he's a comedic
he was in
actor.
Guardian of the Galaxy. He's one of my favorite new actors, and I think he'll make the movie good or bad. It will depend on his performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is I'm excited to hear about how they're reviving these film franchises. Because while I've heard about them growing up, I've never, to be honest, I've never seen Jurassic Park or any of the Star Wars films. So this is an opportunity, I guess, to get me to come in and make a new fan out of me.
Well,
good.
You
Yeah.
got something to do this weekend. Go home, and I recommend them definitely.
No, definitely. I think that because like you said, there are big fan followings with these films, and I think that they kind of they get very protective of their culture and of their film franchise, and so. But at the same time, I think that just like you said, new technology, new characters, new worlds here with these film franchises. So why not bring in new audiences to kind of get in on the fun and get in on the love of this whole culture?
Speaking of being protective, I know J.J. Abrams, who is making the new Star Wars films, he is very, very protective of people trying to get on set and take pictures and stuff. He has his actors get into covered vehicles that'll take them from place to place. They put up tents to try to misdirection people. He did the same thing when he redid the Star Trek movies. he does not want anything to get leaked about
Very
this film.
secretive.
So that way when it comes out, people are just blown away.
I just feel like no matter what, something's gonna get leaked. I mean, that just happens now. I mean, there's people, I mean, everyone has a camera on their phone, obviously, anyone on set. Like, I know if I'm a productions assistant, you know, I mean, are they gonna make me check in my phone before I go into work? I would imagine that's what they're probably gonna do.
Well, my philosophy is that if Beyonce can do it, anybody can
That
do
is so true. If Beyonce can do it, then anyone can do it. And on that note, we're going to have to say goodnight, but thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for joining us all semester. This is our last producers panel of the fall semester, but please come back and join us next semester in January when we get started back up. But be sure to check us out during Christmas break on Facebook and Twitter and on our website at www.bg24news.org. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.